Hi, welcome to the lecture on open source software basics. This is the first in a series of lectures on open source software. In this lecture, we'll try to understand the meaning of open source software. Now, what is open source software? Let us try and understand this with the help of an example. Let's say a software called VidPlay for playing movies in all formats is made available online for download and installation. Would this software be an open source software just because it is freely made available online? No, not really. The fact that a software is made available online for download and installation does not make it an open source software. Now let's say, for example, the software VidPlay also has its source code available online for download. The fact that source code is made available, would it make it an open source software? Not yet. The fact that a source code is made available online would not make a software open source software. There would be many softwares for which source codes are made available online, which are not open source softwares. Now, in order to use any software which is made available online, you will need permission. And these permissions are generally granted through licenses. Let's say, for example, our software VidPlay is made available under a license. The source code is there online, and VidPlay is made available under a license. Would the fact that there is a license governing the software make it open source software? No, not yet. In order for this software to be an open source software, the software should be governed by an open source license. And open source licenses are licenses that generally have certain terms and conditions in them. The basic conditions that go or that are there in an open source license are: first, the software should be made available for copying, modification, and distribution. Any person should be able to copy the software, modify the software in the way he wants to modify it, and then distribute it. Now, most of the open source software licenses come with distribution conditions. While some of them have very restrictive distribution conditions, others have simple and easy to follow distribution conditions. The conditions may range from giving attribution to the person who has created the software, or maintaining the notice of copyright with respect to the person who holds copyright on the software, to making the source code available during distribution, and also transferring the license along with the software when you distribute it to somebody else. An open source software should not have in its license any restrictions with respect to use of the software. If the software has restrictions based on technology, based on software, or based on field, or based on hardware, then that software will not be considered to be an open source software. For example, if a software license says that that particular software can be used only on Windows platform, then that will not be considered to be an open source software because it has a restriction based on technology. In the same way, if the software says that the software license says that this particular software can be used only in agriculture and not in any other field, then there is a restriction based on the field. That will not be considered to be open source software. Furthermore, if the software license says that the software can be used only on Samsung devices or only on Nokia devices and not on any other devices, in that case also the software will not be considered to be an open source software because there is a restriction with respect to hardware on which it can be used. So to summarize, a software will be considered to be an open source software if the source code is made available, if the right to copy, modify, and distribute are available, if there are certain conditions which are imposed for distribution of the software. One of the basic conditions that is generally incorporated in all open source software licenses is attribution of the software to the original author or the copyright owner, and there are no restrictions with respect to use of the software in the open source software license. So to conclude, the open source software license, or the license that governs the software, basically determines whether a software is an open source software or not to a large extent. Now, why do you need a license in order to use a software? The software is generally governed by intellectual property protection under either the copyright law or patent law or both. And these rights are held by the copyright owner unless the copyright owner actually grants you the permission, or unless the patent holder actually grants you the permission. So the open source software movement is largely based on the copyright and patent holders of the software claiming rights with respect to their softwares under copyright law and or patent law, and giving away those rights for a particular purpose in mind. Okay, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, comments or observations, you can contact us. Our contact email ID is contact@ipracademy.com. Now at this point, I would also like to bring to your notice some additional resources that may be useful for you for further reading. First, you can visit Synapse blog. It has a lot of information on open source software. www.synapseblog.com. Then we also have online courses, free online courses, which any person can register and go through without any cost being involved. There is a course on open source software made available. You can visit and learn about the online courses by visiting www.onlineipcourses.com. Then we also have a free online radio and a free online newsletter. If you're interested, you can register for them. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to meeting you in our future lectures. Have a wonderful time. Enjoy.